You are making the world a better place by listening to the Joy of Living podcast. This is your guide to achieving a more purposeful, powerful, and positive life. Join Barry Shore in unlocking the best version of you and becoming happier, healthier, and wealthier. And now, here's your ambassador of joy, Barry Shore.
Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Remember, you're good-looking. It's always looking for and finding the good, and you found good in abundance. And because you tuned in consciously and conscientiously to the Joy of Living podcast with your humble host, Barry Shore. And today is going to be the most fascinating podcast that I've done, and I've been doing this for a number of years, hundreds of podcasts, and I dare say it may even be the most fascinating, disturbing, interesting, engaging podcast that you've heard ever. Yes, that's a buildup. We're going to be talking with and learning from and working with Dr. John Abramson in a couple of minutes. So just get ready for something absolutely stunningly fascinating. So you tuned in, as I said, to the Joy of Living podcast, because, you know, in this show, we discuss the three fundamentals of life. And these three fundamentals will make you happier, healthier, and wealthier. Who doesn't want that? The first fundamental of life, of course, is that your life has purpose. And when you lead a purpose-driven life, number two happens. In this case, good number two, you go mad. Now, MAD is a wonderful acronym that stands for make a difference. You lead a purpose-driven life, you make a difference in the world. And the third fundamental is to unlock the power and the secrets of everyday words and terms. Simple example, this show is being carried over the internet. And if you ask anybody, what does WWW stand for? Invariably, it has to do with the internet, of course. And factually, they're speaking, they're correct. But in our world, the world of the positive, purposeful, powerful, and pleasant, WWW stands for what a wonderful world. And of course, whenever you hear the opening bars of an amazing song by Louis Armstrong, Satchmo, and it's gone viral, not just touching tens of millions or hundreds of millions, but billions of people around the planet, what's the first thing you do when you hear the opening bars? You smile. You can't help it. Now, smile is one of the most important words you could ever internalize, utilize, and leverage in your life, because smile stands for seeing miracles in life every day. Yeah, seeing miracles in life every day. Oh, thank God, after post-COVID and such, I'm back. I'm speaking to audiences and no mask and hugging and lots of energy. I just spoke to a group of 1,176 people, and I'm telling the story of Barry Shore, and I'm talking about seeing miracles in life every day. And some people are raising their hands and say, hey, Barry Shore, I've been up for hours. I've seen any miracles. And I asked them, are you here? Can you hear? Can you stand still? I can't do that. Can you walk? I can barely do that. Do you have water to drink? Do you have food? Do you have a place to sleep? You have family, you have friends. Every single one of those is a miracle. And what's the proof? Simple as proof. 1 million people didn't get out of bed this morning. You know why? They died. By definition, if you're watching or listening, you didn't. If we have an obligation to live life to the full. Let me tell you a quick story. It's about me. Imagine, if you can, standing up in the morning, hale and hearty, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, and that evening being in the hospital totally, completely paralyzed from the neck down. And it was not an automobile accident. It was not a spinal injury. A rare disease took over my body and rendered me what's called a quadriplegic, which means nothing from my neck down moved. I could only communicate by blinking my eyes. 144 days in the hospital. 2 years in a hospital bed in my own home. I couldn't turn over by myself. 4 years in a wheelchair. I had braces on both my legs, my hips to my ankles, and that was progress. Thank God today I'm able to be vertical and ambulatory with the help of a 7-foot walking wand. So I'm a triped, not a biped. I still can't walk up a stair by myself. I can't walk up a curb by myself. I have help 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. But you hear my voice, positive, purposeful, powerful, and pleasant, all because of this one word, smile, seeing miracles in life every day. I got to tell you a quick story. My 8-year-old niece comes over to me a few weeks ago. She says, Uncle Barry, can we spell smile S-M-I-E-L? I thought about it. Smile, smile, sounds the same. Why not? I asked her, how come? She says, because then it would stand for seeing miracles in everyday life. Out of the mouth of babes. But what was she doing? She was creating the kind of world she wants to live in. Now, CREATE is a fabulous acronym. It stands for causing rethinking, enabling all to excel. Rethinking. We're going to talk a lot about rethinking today with Dr. Abramson. Now, when you talk about rethinking, it's really about the idea of being able to shift perspective. And we're talking about just a small shift in perspective. Now, I've been working with people for more than 42 years, over 1 million people in the past 42 years. And I can tell you 97.2% of all people, when I talk about shift in perspective, they drop the F in shift and the other stuff happens. So you're going to be careful when you're pronunciation, shift perspective, because what will happen, you'll be able to internalize, utilize, and leverage the 6 most important words in your life that you'll ever learn. And they are choice, not chance, determines your destiny. Choice, not chance, determines your path in life and the trajectory. So before we bring on Dr. John Abramson, I'm going to warn him and my listeners, the new ones especially, that I do use a lot of 4-letter words. I even use the 4-letter FU word because of the shock value and it's fun. Now, of course, the 4-letter words that we use because live in the world of the positive, purposeful, powerful, and pleasant are love, life, hope, free, gift, pray, play, swim. And the 4-letter FU word is fun. Fun, yes. F-U, capital N, capital N. Now, right away, some people say, hey, Barry Shore. Fun's only spelled with 3 letters. Not in our world. The world of the positive, purposeful, powerful, and pleasant. F-U, capital N, capital N. So after the show, when you see your family and friends, point your finger with a twinkle in your eye, smiling face, say, F-U, everybody. But remember to add right away capital N, capital N. Say, where'd you get that? I said, I listened to Barry Shore, the Joy of Living podcast. And then you'll be able to remember and talk to them about what Dr. John Abramson is going to be sharing with us today. Because again, it's disturbing, informative, and engaging. That's an acronym for the word DIE. Yes, we'll be talking about that. DIE, but we want to do it in the context of life. So before we bring on wonderful Dr. Abramson, I just want to urge everybody to use the 2 most powerful words in the English language 3 times a day, consciously and conscientiously from now and the rest of your life. You know why? Because it will help you, your family, your friends, and all living beings. And these 2 words are thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank stands for to harmonize and network kindness. The Dalai Lama is quoted as saying, I read in his writings, be kind whenever possible. As he says, always possible. So imagine you go into a coffee shop, you order a fancy latte, you sit down, somebody brings it to you, say, thank you. You go to the coffee shop, you order a fancy latte, you sit down, nobody brings it a couple of minutes, you go to the counter, you say, I'm sorry, we forgot, we'll bring it, sit down, a couple more minutes, somebody brings it, still say, thank you. You're walking out of the coffee shop, it's raining out. Somebody holds the door open for you. You say, thank you. You're walking out of the coffee shop and it's raining and somebody slams the door on you. You say, thank you. You're in traffic. You're late for an appointment. Somebody cuts you off. You say, thank you. Get up in the middle of the night. You stub your toe and it hurts. You say, thank you. To harmonize and nurture kindness. Kind is an amazing word that stands for keep inspiring noble deeds. There is nobody that I would like to introduce to you that inspires noble deeds more than the amazing, wonderful Dr. John Abramson. Dr. Abramson, please say hello to 366,829 people around the world.
Well, hello, all you beautiful people. Thank you for joining me. And Barry, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my ideas with your folks.
And it's such an absolute delight. But as I said, this is going to be the most powerful podcast you will ever listen to. Now, I'm going to urge everybody to share this with 5 people. And the best, just because that way we'll touch over 1.5 million people. And everything you want to know about Dr. John Abramson, and there's lots to know. I could read his bio and it'll take the rest of the show. So I'm not going to do it. But I want everybody to go to the website, www.whatawonderfulworld.barryshore.com, BARRYSHORE.com, barryshore.com. Everything there about Dr. Abramson will be there. So just lean in, listen, absorb, and get ready to listen again and again and share this, because you're about to be brought into a world that you didn't realize existed. So with that as a lead in, I'd like to start with something fascinating, Dr. Abramson, and that is the fact that you're not only trained at some of the most prestigious universities in the world, notably Harvard as an example, and in Boston, Massachusetts. And by the way, just as an aside, so Dr. Abramson comes from a town that borders the town I grew up in. He comes from Newton. I come from Brookline. And that's inside baseball stuff. It doesn't matter to anybody except for the fact that they're contiguous and we were rivals in everything in life. And but now we're together and bringing forth information that is of import. But in addition to that, I want to just mention two other things about Dr. Abramson. One is that he's still on the faculty of Harvard University teaching there. He's been doing that, I think, now for 25, 26 years. They haven't, the reason I mentioned is they haven't kicked him off yet because of what about you're about to hear. The other thing is that he's been voted by his peers, other doctors that have private practices, as one of the outstanding doctors in the state of Massachusetts. Now, that doesn't happen because you're just a guy or a girl. That happens because you're dedicated to what you do. And that dedication you're going to hear about in just a couple of moments, because it's what spurred him in 2004 to publish a book called Overdosed America, The Broken Promise of American Medicine. That was sort of the beginning of his journey to uncover the really, and I say this thinking about the words, the diabolic situation that exists between big pharma and the distribution of medicine and information to the American public, which causes unnecessary deaths. Are you listening? I'm using my words carefully. So I want to start now for the moment, Dr. Abramson. Let's talk about what happened to you in 2016, just a few years ago, when you got ill. You had something, you can use the technical terms, and now just let's tell the story and let's begin the process.
Well, it started in 2016, but the end of the story was just 6 months ago. I gave that talk at Hillsdale College, and I didn't give it in person because I had just gotten out of the hospital with having had a life-saving procedure. But I developed what's called idiopathic ventricular tachycardia, which is a long way of saying that my heart would go into ventricular tachycardia spontaneously without reason. And I lived with that for about 7 years. I was a frequent flyer in the local ambulance service, and the emergency rooms knew me. And it was a real situation. I got shocked in my living room floor once. And it got worse and worse. And I was really in deep trouble. I was in ventricular tachycardia. The medicines wouldn't bring me out of it. And I had 3 ablations that failed. And finally, I got sent into one of the major teaching hospitals in Boston. And 2 world-class docs did an unusual ablation procedure where one doctor went up my groin and threaded a catheter up reverse path into my heart and mapped the electrical beats, that stimulation that was coming from the inside of my heart. And at the same time, another doctor went through the outside of my heart with a catheter, right through the chest wall and into the lining of the heart with another catheter that could monitor the electrical beats that were going on. And using the 2 points of observation, they could map the source of this arrhythmia in 3 dimensions and ablate it. And on November 18th last, they did that. It was a 6-hour procedure. And thank God they found it. And I've been okay since then. And an interesting thing about this is the immediate response, the immediate thought that you'd have is, geez, Abramson is criticizing medicine, and he's the beneficiary of the most high-tech medicine. And yes, that's true, and we'll talk about that. But interestingly, this procedure doesn't come from the biotech industry in the United States. It comes from Latin America, where Chagas disease, parasitic infection that comes from the bite of a kissing bug in Latin America, unleashes a parasite in the body that attacks the heart and creates these terrible arrhythmias. So the docs in Latin America figured out how to do this two-pronged ablation procedure. And one of the doc who went in through the outside of my chest wall into my heart is Colombian and learned the procedure there. So I'm the beneficiary of great medicine here, and the world being innovative, and the United States not having a monopoly on all good ideas and medical innovation. So at this point, I'm thankful to be here. I am continuing the mission. I was a family doc for 20 years, left in 2002 to write a book about the drug VIOXX, which we can talk about, but was a killer drug that was being marketed, and the FDA knew it was trouble, and the New England Journal knew that the article that it had published hadn't represented the dangers of VIOXX well enough, which caused me to leave my practice and say, I can't just keep doing business as usual when I know this is going on. And about 50,000 people died from this drug unnecessarily.
So let's unpack this. Let's do a pause here, because this is obviously remarkable. You're going back now, let's say 2002, so let's say 2 decades ago. Mm-hmm. And you were aware that something that Big Pharma was pushing throughout the country, the drug is called VIOXX, VIOXX, if people want to look it up. But again, everything is going to be on my website. And you knew that what was happening is this was actually killing people. Now, obviously, it saved some people, but it was killing close to 50, 60,000 Americans, and you were exposing it. And that obviously didn't sit well with Big Pharma and other places. So you wrote this book. What did that do personally for your practice? You said you had to leave, not had to leave, but you found that being in practice was not your mission anymore. It's a new mission. The mission is to make people aware that Big Pharma is not necessarily the big loving angel and guardian that we were thinking it was, and exposing that. What happened to you personally, let's say, from big money? Because let's be blunt, follow the money and you'll follow it to an untimely end.
Right. So I left practice, and an important point here is that practicing docs cannot be aware of what's going on. It's impossible. It's a 24/7 job. It takes training in statistics and epidemiology, and generally the data are simply not available. They're hidden, they're private corporate property, and you can't get at it. VIOXX was a particularly interesting situation because Merck was the manufacturer. They turned enough data over to the FDA to show that this was a dangerous drug and had a benefit for very few people. But the article that was published in the New England Journal that reported that study didn't include the dangers that Merck had found in its study. I was able to follow a footnote in an academic journal upstream into the FDA's website. I literally didn't know how to put a web address into a web browser at that point. It was 2001, and this was all new. In any event, I got to the FDA data and saw that this was a dangerous drug. I had been trained as a researcher. I'd done a research fellowship after my residency, and could read that data and see how dangerous it was. Said I was going to leave my practice and I was going to tell this story. I couldn't tell ABC. Peter Jennings on ABC was doing a special, and they came to my office and they filmed me for 4 hours, and they ended up cutting me out of the show and replacing me with the CEO of Merck. And I submitted it to a major magazine, and the magazine said, all our readers know about this already. Nobody knew about this. I couldn't get the word out, decided to leave practice and write a book. So I wrote a book, and it was published, and there was a deafening silence. But that silence only lasted for a week because VIOXX got pulled from the market a week after my book came out. It was, I was lucky, and the world was lucky the drug got pulled. But at that point, I was the guy who wrote the last book, and I got catapulted onto the Today Show twice and did maybe 80 national television shows. And after that, lawyers saw me on TV and realized I could speak English and seemed to understand what science was about. So they started to ask me to be an expert in national litigation. And that was a new career. That allowed me to see in each case, maybe 20 cases, in each case, to have access to about 20 million confidential corporate documents, literally access to the hard drives from the drug companies. And from that, I could piece together what was really going on in the pharmaceutical industry.
So let me put you on pause for a moment.
Yeah.
So you've gone, the good news is that you had been trained as a researcher.
Right.
Because as I'm going using your words, as a regular doc, it's not possible. Not trained in data understanding, not having the time and the ability. So the good news is you were trained as a researcher, and the internet was just emerging, and you were able to save a lot of lives and now become that Sherlock Holmes of the pharmaceutical industry, and utilize all of your talents and, let's be blunt, credentials. Because if you were a doc from Columbia, no offense, but from Harvard and such, okay, you have enough standing. So now you can go in, and as the internet is becoming more and more refined, and go in and begin to really do data research, which was not available to anybody.
Right, exactly.
So you're now going to uncover and expose Big Pharma, not for the benevolent guardian angel, but maybe even a great menace to the American healthcare system. Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say. I'd like to say it slightly differently, that Big Pharma is embedded in the context of advanced capitalism, and their job is to make as much money as they can. It's not to make us healthy. It's not to prevent disease. It's to make as much money as they can for their investors. And
okay, you said it even stronger than I did, Dr. Abramson. I held back from saying that, but you're saying it's profits before people rather than the other way around, which is what we as regular humans, especially in the United States of America, we think it's people first. And you're saying that Big Pharma has, I'll call it this way, sort of gone off on another path, and it's profits before people.
Correct, Barry. But I want to be clear. They are not a singular example. They're just doing their job. If the CEOs and the executives in the drug companies don't maximize their profits, they'll get fired and replaced by people who do. So Big Pharma is responsible for a lot of bad things in American healthcare, but they're just doing their job. And the moral of the story is that this is going to happen in American society until there are guardrails that ensure that they can only make profits if they're serving the public welfare. And we in the United States have uniquely few guardrails to make sure that happens. In the other wealthy countries, they inform doctors about the efficacy of drugs. They control advertising. They control the price of drugs. They control the marketing of drugs in a way that we don't. And so the corporations in the United States are doing what they're allowed to do most of the time. Sometimes they break the law, but mostly they don't.
So let's take a look at what you just said and unpack that a bit, because thank God you've given me some interesting data, and I read the imprimis. One would think the United States, that we're the leader in everything in the world, right? That's what we would think. That's how we feel. And yet you've been helping us understand, and if you look at all other wealthy nations as a comparison to the United States, I don't know, we can name probably 15, 20 of them. Not only are our health costs more than double other places, but we're getting worse returns for our investment. You use numbers such as $12,914, I remember that, per person per year. That's $2+ trillion in healthcare expenditures. And the other wealthy countries are spending on average plus minus $6,100, but we're getting worse outcomes.
Correct, Barry. And we are spending twice as much as the other countries. That $2.3 trillion isn't what we spend on healthcare each year.
Well, that's how much you lose.
It's what we spend on healthcare in excess of what the other wealthy countries are spending. So we're spending double what the other wealthy countries are spending. And what do we get for it? Americans now live 6.3 years less than the citizens of the other wealthy countries. Life expectancy in the United States is now what life expectancy was in the other wealthy countries in 1987. 1987, when they were spending an average of $1,000 per person per year. So we are leaders in medicine. We are by far the leaders in the world in medicine. But what we lead in is making money on biotech innovation, not ensuring that biotech innovation will lead to people living healthier, happier lives, but that the investors will get paid off bigger here than they do anywhere else. And there's such a difference between the US and the rest of the world that between 2/3 and 3/4 of global pharmaceutical profits come from the United States.
Let's take a look at something, and I'm going to withdraw my horns for the moment vis-a-vis Big Pharma and put some of this back on the individual. Part of the genius of the United States of America is that we're very individual oriented. This is the country of I make my own decisions. And in our country, as opposed to many places in the rest of the world, because different mindset, we choose our lifestyle of how we do things. And part of that has to do with diet. I would say diet is a major contributor to poor health. Now, I'm making that statement. I'm not Dr. John Abramson. So I'm going to say that poor diet leads to poor results, which leads to the necessity oftentimes for Big Pharma to come in and say, well, I can cure that without you having to change your way of life. In other words, it's a self-fulfilling negative downward spiral prophecy. Am I being clear when I'm saying that we as Americans are causing an epidemic that Big Pharma is trying to solve, making a lot of money along the way, and oftentimes not solving it because they're not giving us true information sometimes. But if we were to start living more consciously, would that not lower the need for Big Pharma?
It would, Barry, but there's a big but there. The but is that we are allowed to make individual decisions, but doctors and the public are being misinformed so that freedom to make individual decisions is being subverted invisibly. And let me give you an example. We spend in American medical research, 96% of the money is spent on developing new drugs and devices. 4% is spent on how to be healthy, how to help people be healthier. 96 to 4. The truth is that about 20% of our health is determined by the medical care we get. And about 80% of our health is determined by the kinds of things that you were just referring to. Diet is an enormously important one, education, housing, different kinds of support, employment training, and the kinds of things that allow people to live good lives. So in that context, what's happening is all of the knowledge that's informing doctors and informing us people about how to live a good life has been taken over by the research that's being done to maximize the profits to the pharmaceutical industries. We've got this enormous market failure in the generation of the information that we all rely on, the best doctors down to the least educated Americans and everyone in between. That's been taken over by the commercial interests who want to tell us their version of how we can be healthy, which is to use their drug, get sick and use their drugs, when in fact, it's very clear that the path to, if you want to say, how can we make Americans' lifespan as long as the citizens of the other wealthy countries? The clear answer is that we Americans have got to find a way to live our lives in a healthy way, the way the citizens of the other countries do. Part of that's an individual decision, and I agree we must take responsibility. But if we're getting fed bad information, and if the message that comes through our TVs is don't worry about all that stuff, eat all the fat and all the crap that gets advertised, and then just take our pill, our new pill, and you'll be fine. It's not true. You won't be fine. You won't be fine.
On this high note, remember I told you this is going to be the most fascinating podcast you'll ever listen to. And I said the acronym is DIE. It's disturbing, informative, and engaging, as you hear Dr. Abramson. We're going to take a short break because we have wonderful sponsors. We urge you to patronize our sponsors and their services, because we only select ones that are good for you, and they give you good information. So we'll be right back after these brief messages. Don't go away. There's more uplift from Dr. John Abramson on the other side of this. Be right back. Opportunity. What an opportunity. I'm going to use 2 4-letter words right now. Free gift. Free gift. Yes, you can have a copy of my best-selling book, The Joy of Living, How to Slay Stress and Be Happy, the ebook version, for absolutely free. All you have to do is send an email to me, Barry, Barry, at barryshore.com, and in the heading, the subject line, just write free gift. It's as easy as that. This is a life-changing, life-enhancing opportunity. Barry at barryshore.com. You'll be glad you did. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Free gift. Do it now. Take the action. Make it happen right now. Best wishes. Bye. Imagine the kind of place you would want to shop for your favorite fur baby pet. HonestPets.co. Well, you found it. HonestPets.co. Not .com, .co. This is your go-to spot for the best, the cleanest pet treats that exist anywhere on the planet. All of the brands go through a rigorous review to make sure they meet the high standards of cleanliness, health benefits, and naturalness. This site was started by a husband and wife team, and it's veteran-owned, and that care about pets, especially dogs and cats, and coming soon, bird treats. These are very nice young people who really care about making a difference, because a portion of proceeds go to support veteran organizations with a focus on service dogs. This is the place where you want to go. You want to tell your friends this has the finest, yummiest, freshest, all-natural treats and stuff for your fur baby. So go there, honestpets.co. honestpets.co. Do it now. Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Remember, you're good-looking because I was looking for and finding the good. We found good in abundance. Our cup runneth over with good. And an amazing being. His name is Dr. John Abramson. Again, everything you want to know about him is available at the website, my website, www.barryshore.com, barryshore.com. You need to learn more about him. The CV is going to take about 16 pages, but that's okay. You're going to look at his books, especially the latest one, because you need to be informed. When an informed being will be a healthy being. Now, it's going to disturb you, which is great. It's going to hopefully invigorate you, which is great. It's going to engage you, which is great. Again, that's the acronym for DIE, but you don't want to do that. You don't have to, because Dr. Abramson is going to talk to us now about what is it in the system that is preventing the data from coming through. And again, get ready to be amazed by what he's going to tell you, because it's corrupted, and it's corrupted by money. The journals are not releasing the data. Let's hear that story about when you were in the hospital and you had, after, thank God, these two wonderful beings operating union. Now you're having rounds and you're getting the best treatment because you're a member of the tribe, being a doctor, and the doctors are coming around, and there's one who says, well, you should be taking da-da-da-da-da, and you, in the banter, but say the banter back and forth in human terms so we can understand.
Well, let me set the stage first. So I had this 6-hour procedure that really beat me up. I mean, I was in seriously bad condition after that, and was taken to the ICU and to recover. And in the first 6 or 8 hours that I was in the ICU, still really beat up, a cardiologist comes by with his residents and students and wants to talk to me about I should take more medicine to lower my cholesterol. Now,
wait a minute, 6 hours after the operation?
Yeah, maybe 12. I don't know, but in that range. I'm still in bed and I can't talk, and I can't, and it's important to understand that I'm on a cardiology service in the ICU, but it's the electrophysiologists who are super specialist cardiologists who have done the procedure. So they're not in this. The cardiologist comes by and tells me I should be taking more medicine. And I said, well, wait a minute. The study that you're citing that says I should take more medicine wasn't done quite right. And they added in extra endpoints. They didn't just look at heart attacks, strokes, and cardiovascular deaths. They added in what's called cardiovascular revascularization procedures, which is like putting stents in. And the problem with using that as an endpoint is that when that decision is made about whether to put a stent in somebody or not, it's a subjective decision. And the lower somebody's cholesterol is, the less likely they are to get a stent. But the doctors, therefore, whether you're in the active treatment group or the placebo group of the study, then becomes unblinded because you got a low cholesterol. So the doctors are recommending more revascularization procedures. So I say to the doc, and I don't know at this point how much he knows about this stuff, but he knew a lot about it. So I said, look, revascularization procedures were included, and that's no way to do a study. And he said, look, I can't talk about this today. I'll come back tomorrow alone and we can talk. So he comes back the next day, and I'm still recovering from this traumatic experience. And he pulls up a chair like a good doctor does, and he sits down next to my bed. And where he's got the chair, I can look at him and I can look at the cardiac monitor that's monitoring my heart at the same time. And I'm not sure they've cured me. And so I'm worried that there are going to be extra beats that I could go into tachycardia again. And he comes in and says, okay, let's pick up where we were yesterday. And I said, well, that's no way to do a study, to have revascularization procedures as an endpoint. And he says, well, the drug company had to do it because without the revascularization procedures, the study would take too long to do, and it would be too expensive to do. And so now I'm saying, okay, this is going to be an experience. We're off and running. And I say to him, look, I understand that it would be more expensive, but if a drug company wants to tell doctors that they should be prescribing this medicine for their patients and that it's going to help their patients, the ball's in their side of the court to set up the study in a way that will show them whether it actually works or not. And he said, well, that's true. So I said, okay, also, I want to talk to you about something else. When a study like that is published in the New England Journal of Medicine and it's peer reviewed, do you know that the peer reviewers don't get to see the actual data from the study? The peer reviewers. Now, when you hear studies talked about on TV and in the newspaper, what they say is the study was peer reviewed. So it's got to be accurate because they looked at the data. They didn't look at the data. It's a sham. The peer reviewers cannot see the data. So, and I'll tell you something that you say, how the hell does why should I trust Abramson in this? But I'll tell you a story about that.
Why should we trust Abramson in this?
Yeah, why should we trust Abramson in this? So, at this point, he says, I know they can't see the data. And I say to him, I look him in the eye with one eye, and I'm looking at the monitor with the other eye because it's now going to get intense. And I say to him, how can you possibly present yourself as a learned intermediary to your patients when you know that you don't have access to the data and the peer reviewers that you trust to make sure it's the truth don't have access to the data? How can you do that? How can you go to your office and do that? And that was the end of the conversation. And I'm happy to report that I had no extra beats. And that was a wonderful stress test to make sure that the ablation worked. But another story, this is an older story, but I was at a meeting with an editor of one of the major medical journals in the world. And we got up to walk out of the room the same, and we knew who each other were. And I said to him, why don't you guys, I said, peer reviewers can't see the data. He said, yeah. I said, well, why don't you guys just require that when a drug company submits a clinical trial for publication, that they submit what's called a clinical study report that the drug companies prepare for all clinical trials that may have any regulatory ramifications. So it's a 3,000-page document that I had become very familiar with in the litigation that I had done, because that's the first thing you go to find out what really happened. And I said, why don't you just make the drug company submit the clinical trial report? It won't cost them any money. And once you get good at it, you can go through it in 10 or 20 hours and pretty much figure out what happened. And he said, before he took the next step, he said, we don't do that. My journal doesn't require the clinical study report be submitted because that would create a death spiral for the journal, a death spiral for the journal. And what he meant was, yeah, you're right. We don't get the data. But if we required the drug companies to submit the data with the manuscript, we would lose a lot of those publications of those clinical trials. Now, why is that important? That's the financial lifeblood of the journals, because the journals, when they publish a clinical trial that has clinical ramifications and is going to increase drug usage, and that's what the clinical trials, that's their purpose, is to increase drug usage of new drugs. If they required that information, the drug companies would take their clinical trials elsewhere. And what would happen to the journal? Something very few people understand is that a major part of journals' incomes comes from the journals selling reprints of those articles they publish back to the drug companies, so the drug companies can give them to their sales reps to use as marketing tools. So what they've done is they've submitted their manuscript without data. They send it to the journal. The journal, like information, washes it, launders it. It's information laundering. Launders it, says it's peer reviewed and that this is accurate and complete. And then the journal makes money by selling the reprints back to the drug maker. How much money is involved? A lot of money. In 2005, the last year for which there's any data about this, the Lancet, which is the premier medical journal in the EU, the Lancet made 41% of its revenues from selling reprints to drug companies. This is a lot of money, 41%.
By the way, that was 25 plus years ago.
Not quite. It was 2005. So
2005. It was 18 years ago.
Yeah.
18 years ago, Dr. Abramson. I think things have gone, let's call it now 46%.
Yeah, right. Well, it's probably more because in 2008, the average annual cost of a new drug was $2,115. $2,115 in 2008. In 2022, the average annual cost was not $2,100. It was $180,000.
Wait, I'm sorry. My mind, the numbers are staggering.
Yes.
It's staggering.
Staggering. $180,000 in 2000.
80 times the increase.
That's right. And that wasn't an aberration. That was 2021. In 2022, it was $250,000. $250,000 is the median price of a new drug. Now, when you go back to reprints, can you imagine the value of a reprint when your drug, the median price of your drug is $250,000?
Let's take 4 steps back just for a moment, because I'm reeling.
Yeah.
As I said, this is called DIE. This is disturbing, informative, and engaging. And you don't need.
I want to wait a minute, Barry. No. I want to spell dial, D-I-E-L, because the L, disturbing, informative, engaging, and the L is for liberating. If you don't know this stuff, you're getting blown around by it, and your doctors are getting blown around by it. And you got to understand this is going on if you want to be free to pursue your own health in a rational way.
So that's why you need to share this with 5 people, to 5 people you care about. It should be shared with 50 or 100 people, everybody, but just do 5 for the moment, because this is so vital. I wrote down 2 words here. one of them begins with the letter C. And I'm about to say something very disturbing. Based on what you told us, it borders on the criminal. Because information, even if it was laundered, which is your language, it's actually somewhat worse in the sense that it is information that is withheld. Purposely.
Yes, the drug
Purposely
companies
withheld.
absolutely. They say that the results of their clinical trials are their property, and that the fundamental purpose of their clinical trials that are their property is to sell drugs.
Well, first of all, the good news is, I mean, in a bizarre way, that they're brazen enough to say the truth.
Yes.
True. But what they're saying is absolutely true. In other words, those clinical trials are theirs, and if they choose not to share them, shame on us, meaning the medical community, the Congress, whatever group of people that is fighting for rights of human beings to live well. Shame on us for not saying, by the way, Big Pharma, you please bring out your drugs. We love you. Just share with us what's going on. And if they can't do that, by definition, you are seemingly withholding information. Withholding information could be a criminal activity in a court of law.
No, it's not.
Oh.
I mean, it number one, people like you are a critical link in this chain. If this information is going to get out to people, it's going to be because people like you are willing to break through the resistance, the stonewalling of the establishment media, who won't talk about these issues at all. At all. When I wrote Sickening, I thought this book is going to bring down this whole edifice, and it's all going to get straightened out. All I have to do is publish this book, except nobody in the media would talk about it or review it or invite me on TV. I did, I don't know, 80 or 100 TV shows.
So now I know what your middle name is. John Sisyphus Abramson.
Yeah, right. Exactly. In any event, we need journalists like you who can talk to the public and say, look, I don't care what the economic ramifications are. You guys got you listeners out there who are intelligent people and want to get the facts from Barry. You've got Barry is going to allow people like me who get shut out by the mainstream media, notwithstanding my credentials and experience and everything else. I'm talking in a soundproof room without people like you. And let me say one other thing, Barry.
Yes.
I did a lot of litigation, and sometimes in civil litigation, I was doing civil litigation. So people who paid for drugs that weren't worth it, or who got hurt by drugs that were misrepresented, were trying to get money back from the drug companies. But one time there was a drug, it was a cousin of VIOXX, and it was an anti-inflammatory drug, and my perception was that it created risks that the company hadn't been forthright about. And I was the expert who figured that out in litigation. It sold only about a third as much, as many pills as VIOXX did, so the public wasn't really aware of it. I picked up the telephone and called the Department of Justice and said, I know something about this drug, but I can't tell you because I signed a confidentiality agreement. And the Department of Justice sent me a federal subpoena to come to FBI headquarters with my computer and tell them what I knew about this drug. So I did. I can't tell you what it was because it's under seal, but I can tell you the facts that it happened. So I did that, and 6 months, they keep their cards close to their chest, just like in the federal cases that are going on right now. But 6 months after I testified, there was a press release from the Department of Justice that said that Pfizer had been fined the largest criminal fine, had pled guilty to a felony, and was fined the largest criminal fine in U.S. history for any matter, $1.195 billion. They were fined. I played a role. I don't know how big a role I played, but I bring this up, A, because I'm very proud that I was able to participate in this, but B, this stuff is real and it's true and it's going on. And when it does get fact check and litigation and with the drug companies able to defend themselves, it doesn't go away. These problems they aren't a figment of people who are anti-capitalist or have a grudge against the drug companies. They're people like me who would like to see society better served by the investments that are made and by the wonderful gifts of medical science being used to help people live healthier, happier lives than to make money for investors.
And there's no reason, by the way, that those two can't work hand in glove. I mean, the genius of the system is that that's what it's designed for. In other words, the more you help, the more you make.
Right.
If you try to help, you try to make by squeezing, you can make more money. But I'll mention something right now. We only have a few more minutes left. It's gone by so quickly. So first of all, thank you again, Dr. Abramson, for being here. Right now, there's something going on in the Wall Street Journal. There was a very large ongoing article about several people that were adversely affected by COVID vaccines, very adversely affected. And several of these people went out onto the internet, onto Facebook, and created some groups and such like that. And within, I think it was 90 days or 100 days, they had more than 21,000 people nationwide and about 48,000 people worldwide who had adverse reactions to COVID vaccines. Facebook closed down those groups. Why? Because it was said that you were giving misinformation. In other words, it was implied that Big Pharma said, this is not good for us. We don't need this. All people were doing was expressing, and everybody was saying that we're not anti-vaxxers. We love the idea of vaccinations. Hello, right. We're just telling people what happened. I'm going to tell you on a most fundamental personal level. One of the people that was mentioned, because I read some of the stuff before it was taken down, got GBS, Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is what triggered my quadriplegia from taking the vaccine. Yep. Now, you can't make a direct correlation because the nature of human life is it was triggered and such like that. I purposely did not take the COVID vaccine because I didn't want to get near it. I was too worried. Okay, and thank God nothing happened, et cetera, et cetera. But it was very interesting that Dr. Fauci went and made a definitive statement saying the following, I'm not quoting exactly, that people who have had Guillain-Barré syndrome probably would best served not taking the vaccine. 2 days later, he reversed himself and said, I believe that it's fine for people who have had Guillain-Barré or other autoimmune diseases to take the vaccine. Obviously, somebody from the vaccine companies heard him and said, hello, I don't think that's what you really want to say. Now, again, I'm not accusing him that that's exactly what happened. The Don picked up the phone and said, this is, from The Godfather. But it's in line with what you're discussing here, that for good or ill, and mostly ill at the moment, we're talking about ill, Big Pharma has created a process that is profit-oriented first, people-oriented second, and unless and until we, people, make an effort to not only help ourselves, but to call this out, it will just continue because we have to stop them.
That's right. And we the people have to call it out with a louder voice than pharma buys with all the money that it's throwing around Congress. And we won't get change until the people have a stronger voice than the pharmaceutical lobbyists. It's that simple. It's political power, and it's an uphill battle. But again, people like you who are willing to bring this message to the public and say pharma is violating its social contract and is doing everything it can to maximize profits for investors and not worrying about the health consequences or economic consequences on our country. And the people have to take that back. Let me say about the COVID vaccines, I think the heart of that problem was that the drug companies didn't release their data about side effects, and that the FDA didn't make them release their data about side effects. And the FDA then, as time went on and we got to the boosters, the FDA didn't require the drug companies to do randomized controlled trials So the last booster that was brought in, the bivalent booster, that was approved. The Pfizer booster was approved on the basis of antibody levels in 8 mice. Now, Moderna did significantly better. They did 25% better than Pfizer. They used 10 mice.
By the way, I'm going to interrupt you for a moment, because what you're saying is so astounding that if I read it in a comic book or a satire by Jonathan Swift, I think you're exaggerating to an extent that's hyperbole. And yet, by definition, you're not.
I'm not, because I get my ass sued if I am.
I don't want your ass to get sued.
Thank you. You're my brother.
Well, on a high note of laughing and such, the time, I can't believe it's come this close fast. We have 3 questions I'm going to ask you. You ready?
Yep.
Number 1 question. Will you come back again?
It would be my pleasure.
Thank you. Number 2, you have only 80 seconds to answer this, wonderful Dr. Abramson. 80 seconds. What is your most fervent desire?
Personal or professional or existential?
You can do as you wish.
Well, my most fervent desire right now is to, I want to help people understand these problems and empower people with this information. And I want to do a bit of a pivot in my life. I've been on the battlefields. I've been like a Marine Corps sergeant for a long time. And I want to pivot a little bit and get back in touch with the higher spirits and, get my own life in line with the Great Spirit, and a little bit less of this hand-to-hand combat.
And I hope you're able to do both. And number 3, may I give you a hug in front of 368,917 people around the world?
Yes.
But let me tell you, speaking of spirit, let me tell you what HUG stands for. Ready? Heartfelt, unlimited giving. Heartfelt, unlimited giving, which is what you've done for us today. Count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. From Dr. John Abramson and Barry Shore, we are so thankful and happy that you're here. Again, I urge you all, please share this with 5 people. It's been a very disturbing, I hope, informative, engaging, and as Dr. Abramson said, liberating podcast. So people need to hear this, because
Barry,
on this show, yes?
Can I say one more thing? I really want people to read my book. It's
going to be on the website.
Is there.
Yes.
If people can't afford it, if you have listeners who can't afford it, is this okay, Barry? You tell me if this will work.
Yes.
But I'd like people to write to Barry, and I will send him a PDF manuscript of my book. And if you can't afford to buy it, I will give it to you. This is not about making money. It's about getting this information out. So if you would be willing to send it out, and I'll send you the manuscript. Send
me the manuscript. John, I love you anyway, but now I love you. This is so again, this is why people tune in and listen to The Joy of Living, because on this show, it's all about the 3 fundamentals of life. Life has purpose. You just heard Dr. John Abramson. He's purposeful living. And when you lead a purpose-driven life, you go mad. You make a difference. He's making a difference, as are everyone listening. You make a difference in the world when you do the following: uncover the power and the secrets of everyday words and terms like smile, seeing miracles in life every day, www, what a wonderful world. And you'll be happier, healthier, and wealthier. Create the kind of world you want to live in, causing rethinking, along Dr. John Abramson's lines, rethinking, enabling all to excel. Do a shift in perspective. Understand that Big Pharma is there to maximize profits, not your health. Therefore, it's in your hands to speak out and take control of your life. And of course, understand that choice, not chance, determines your destiny. Just like John has been telling us, choice, not chance, determines your destiny. Use 4-letter words in your life. And again, positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant 4-letter words like love, life, hope, free, gift, play, praise, swim, and tell the world to F you. Capital N, because you'll tell that to your friends and family and say, what are you talking about? I say, I just heard Barry Shore, and he's talking about die with an L, and it's disturbing, informative, and engaging, and liberating at the same time. What are they talking about? Well, let's listen and tell people to listen to this show because it's amazing. So a blessing from, and one other thing, use the 2 most powerful words in the English language 3 times a day, consciously and conscientiously. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, John. And from John, Dr. Abramson, and Barry Shore, our blessing for you is go forth. Live exuberantly. Spread the seeds of joy, happiness, peace, and love. Go mad. Go make a difference. John, don't go away, okay?
Okay.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Joy of Living podcast. Now that's another step towards your healthier, happier, and wealthier life. Never hesitate to do good in the world, no matter what the situation. Join us for another upbeat discussion next time at barryshore.com. And be sure to leave a rating and subscribe to the show to get more conversations like this. And remember to share it with your family and friends too. See you on the next episode.
Fly.